Yeah, we are in live, so.
All right. Thank you. Okay, everyone. I am Rajoshi Banerjee. I am a romantic student, so I'm doing my PhD in Romanticism and Romantic Literature. As you know, I'm the TA for this course. And can everyone hear me? Just give me a thumbs up or something so that I see, because I can't see any of you. All right, I see a couple of hands raised. Thank you, Krati. Thank you. Thank you, Aditi. All right. So thank you for coming for this course. How are you finding this course? I mean, this, as you know, is an interactive session, so I won't like go on speaking. I want to like field some questions from you. First of all, how are you finding this course? Let me just hear. You have been going through this course for a while. You have been answering assignments. We will talk about the final exam, of course. But before we go into the final exam, can someone just tell me what are your major concerns? What you like about the course? Anyone? You can just unmute yourself and go ahead. If not, you can just put anything in the chat box. It's up to you. Anyone at all. Yeah? No one? I mean, without any comments from you, it will be difficult for me to give you suggestions, right? While we are waiting for a couple of other people. Yeah, go ahead. They, how do you say your name? They is, am I right?
Yeah, it's DA.
They? Yeah.
Actually, I'm not so sure about the pronunciation either. It's
Okay, fair
slightly
enough.
complicated.
Right. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I'm really enjoying the lectures itself. The syllabus is really engaging, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a lot of intellectual conversations with my friends regarding these topics outside of classrooms as well. But the thing is, I'm really struggling with the assignments. I feel like I cannot answer all the questions based on just the lectures that I'm attending, basically going through. I feel like
Yeah.
I need extra input. So I need extra research on my own part to do these assignments. So that is something that I'm
Hmm.
really struggling with because I'm not able to find time for that.
Okay. Could you give me a, I mean, thank you for being so honest and like coming up with this. And this is the reason we are having this chat, right? Could you give me some specific example? I mean, when you say you have to do something apart from the lectures, when you say you have to do some other research, why is that? Could you just come
Uh,
up with anything specific, any question or anything like that? Because,
yeah, so
yeah, go ahead, then I'll tell you a couple of other things.
Yeah, so for example, in the week 6 assignment itself, the one that we just got the results for,
Mm-hmm.
there was a question relating to how the fencing in the foreground of the painting raises an important issue of politics of landscape. This issue is also raised by. Now, I haven't read Coleridge's Dejection and Ode. I've read Shelley's Mont Blanc. I've read Claire's The Village Minstrel.
Mm.
Now, suppose that I have not gone through these works, I would have to go through these works and I would have to, I can't just go through these works. I also have to analyze them.
Mm.
And this is just one such question. So, Like in the same assignment, if there are multiple works that I have to go through, I'm currently also doing my BA. So a lot of that my time is invested in that. It's a full-time course as well. So on the
Mm,
side, I don't really get enough time to also go through all of this. Of
mm.
course, this is not an issue in all the assignments. It's just sometimes I struggle with this. It's not a major issue. It's just something that I struggle with.
Right. Okay. I get your point correctly. And do you know what the answer is right now? So, when you say you have to do external research, let me point this out, and this goes for the final exam as well, that some of the questions will be based on the readings. It won't be a copy paste from the lecture transcript. That is the point of going to the course itself, right? I can assure you there is not a single question, as you will see, which are beyond the lectures. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? It doesn't mean, so Professor Nayar, Pramod Nayar, whatever he's talking of, he's giving you certain hints about certain, not hints, he's specifically giving you certain texts, right? Even if you do not read every single text, so every week you're not expected to read 3 novels, but these poems are really short poems, so you need to be aware of what these poems are. Okay, as you yourself said, Dey, and thank you for that. That not all questions are based on that, but some of these questions will be based on your knowledge of the texts, which cannot be just copy pasted from what Professor Nair has said in the lecture itself. All right, so I understand you have a time crunch, but at least some of the readings you have to do. And it's not only about analyzing. For example, the village minstrel. So, what was the question? I mean, just focusing on this question itself. The fence. Do you know about the term enclosure? Who is coming up with that? And this is what Professor Nair has already discussed, right? Right, the enclosure, the property laws, those relate to the fencing, right? So therefore, even if you haven't read the poem, you know that is related with John Clare, right? So think, even if you haven't read every single thing, just pay attention to what the concepts are. Does that answer your question there?
Yeah, it wasn't really a question. It was just a concern that I had. But of course,
Right.
I understand that there is some amount of input that is expected from me as well. It's not just, I do not expect Professor Nair to spoon feed everything to me. It's just a concern
Mhm.
that I had.
Yeah, so there will be, I don't know whether you have taken other courses or not. So there will be some straightforward questions, which will be exactly a kind of, if you have gone through the lectures, they will be kind of what I call factual questions or copy paste questions. I mean, direct questions. When was the London Times or when was the Punch magazine published? So, those are like direct questions. But these questions require thought. And as I said, two things are very important, and this is for the final exam as well. Number one, some of the texts you should read, not only so Professor Nair in a 20-minute lecture will give you certain directions, and there are lists of texts, right? So some of the students, some of the learners have like asked me to send them some material, so I have from the library given them some texts as well, right? So you have to read some of them, if not everything. And the second part of that is that think, even if you haven't read it, think. Questions are logical as well. For example, the question that you mentioned, Coleridge has nothing to do with property. If you have gone through the lectures, you will see property, fencing, enclosure, land rights. All these things mostly go with John Clare. So even if you haven't read it, forget about the poems. You see the names, you can take an educated guess if you know your material. All right. So that is another thing. Think, always logically think. Don't always get flustered with a question that, oh, I don't know this. Always think, you have been listening to the lectures, you are involved, and I can see that. So if that is the case, just think a little more and see how logically things can work out. All right. And thank you again, Dave, for like mentioning that. And I will touch upon I will say the same thing in a while when I talk about the final question paper. There are a couple of suggestions I'll give today, and if you're a part of the discussion forum, you will actually get a lot of suggestions in the next few days. I had already posted some of the question patterns and everything, and there will be some specific suggestions I'll give. By the way, one question I want to ask: how many of you are registered for the exam? Just raise your
I
hand
am
or something.
registered.
Okay, thank you, Aditi.
I have also registered, sir.
Oh, who was that? I couldn't figure out. Hmm. Okay, what other questions do we have? Come on, don't be hesitant. There are no stupid questions. I mean, this is the reason we are here. We'll clarify most of the things. Yeah, on YouTube, I actually see Amala having the same question as Jay. But yeah, as I said, not all questions will be straightforward. I mean, understand, this is a literature course. This is not like a regular factual question kind of thing. And any, even like you take any exam. I mean, need not be a fear to face the exam. You need to actually think a bit, read, make your own notes, prepare yourselves. But at the time you're facing the questions, just think about it. Be confident. You know things. And this time in the exam paper, there will be some subjective questions as well, not only multiple choice. So you will have like several opportunities to actually say what you have to say, rather than just tick mark what is right and what is wrong. Okay, come on. What other questions do you have? I'm pretty sure you have several questions. Go
Hello.
ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, who's this? I can't hear properly. Is that
Sir,
Krati?
yes, sir. This is Krati.
Kriti, go
Yes, sir.
ahead.
Yes, sir. Actually, I have posted one of my questions yesterday on our discussion forum, but yet no answer was there. So yeah, I had posted it again on one of the feedback was asked about like to sir also. I have posted the same.
The question on the Sublime, right?
Yeah, on the Sublime.
I just saw it. I'm sorry. I will actually reply to that on the forum as well. But yeah, yesterday I couldn't like check it. But yeah, I just saw it before logging in today. So it was
Yes.
like directly there in the lecture itself. So Burke's Sublime is like very simple actually. So what Edmund Burke is saying, that anything terrible or anything terrifying is what a sublime represents. Okay, number one, it actually makes you motionless. Okay, so once you are facing the sublime, you are rooted to the spot. So something like, and it is really interesting to look at paintings rather than poetry. Okay, when you look at a painting which is like, for example, the Avalanche in the Alps, right, which is by Philip de Loutherbourg, the French artist. It is in the lecture. Just look at those pictures themselves. So what is Loutherbourg showing you? There's this huge mountain, landslide is happening, and there are tiny little humans at the end of the at the corner of the picture itself. So what does it represent? They are so the human becomes such a tiny little minuscule figure when faced with the entire world of terrifying nature. So Burke is basically saying the same thing. So the sublime is not serene picturesque like a picture you would see on a calendar, right? There is a hut, there is a stream, there is a mountain, that is, and there's like beautiful clouds. That is the picturesque. On the other hand, is the sublime, which is terrifying, right? So terrifying and which renders you motionless and something that overwhelms your senses. That is the question of the internal mind. Faced with the sublime, you cannot, you figure out how small you are and how dangerous everything is around you. That is, in a nutshell, what birth is talking of. That is birth sublime. Does that make sense? Kritik, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No problem. And if you, one more suggestion, if you actually go back to that lecture, that particular lecture, now that you have understood this, just see the exact quote from Burke. Professor Nayar, Pramod Nayar actually has given you a quote. Before talking of the paintings, he has given you a particular quote from Burke. Now, if you have understood, and if it is not clear, do tell me, okay? I mean, that's why we are doing this session. We will clarify everything. But if you have understood, now go back to that and see that exact quote, what Burke is saying in what way. All right?
Yes, sir. Just last one question, sir. That there
Yeah.
are some recommendations after every lecture, and we do have some recommendations even on the course, main course also. So, are they different, or should we only check these recommendations just after the lectures? Like I can see one of the cited one here, like the Eagleton Terry, the ideology of aesthetics, and the dialogues on feminist criticism and all. Should we go through them, and how much we should go through them? Like up to like what extent, because it's really a major thing, so please can you throw light on that?
Yeah, a lot of those are given, right? Which one
Yeah.
are you talking of? Could you give the specific example again?
Yes, sir, just wait a minute, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Take your time.
So the lecture name is um the lecture name is Aesthetics Wordsworth. I think it's of sixth assignments. And
Yeah.
the lastly, it is given, I think three of many are there, but like I'm just for an example, I'm taking
Hmm.
because I see that these are important ones also, because even Professor Nair also has cited them.
Hmm.
Eagleton Terry, The Ideology of Aesthetics, and especially one which I'm really curious also to read is The Gender in Theory, Dialogues on Feminist Criticism, edited by Lindy Kaufman, Oxford. So all these are we supposed to go through that after every lecture they cited?
Okay, now I get your question. Now listen to this very carefully, okay? And understand what I'm saying. There are two or three things you have to keep in mind. Number one, very easily answering your question, you are expected in the sense it would be better. That's why there are recommendations to go through most of those. But as Dhey was saying, as you are saying as well, it is not possible to go through every single thing that are recommended as well as that are in the lecture. Okay, just be practical. This is one thing I will tell you very honestly. For an 8-week course, it is not, I mean, it is not practical to think that you will read every single thing cover to cover. Now, how do you classify? I mean, how do you categorize? Okay, these are the most important which I have to read, and these are the things I will try to read 20% of it, 70% of it, if not all. Okay, how do you make that distinction? Now, there are two things I will say here. Number one, all the primary texts. I hope you all understand what is a primary text and a secondary text, right? Primary texts are the actual text that you're reading. Coleridge's Kubla Khan, right? Godwin's Caleb Williams, all the romantic texts that we are dealing with. Prometheus Unbound or Ode to the West Wind by Shelley, Wordsworth's Prelude or Tintern Abbey. These are your primary texts. Kriti, what you're talking of, those are secondary texts. Those are commentaries, right? Those are anthologies or books which deal with the Romantics. Like Professor Nair himself has published a book on the Romantics. So these are secondary texts, the book on gender that you're talking of, right? So the primary texts, do as much as possible. Those are your primary focus because questions will be from that. Now, if you follow the lecture, everything in the lecture alongside the primary texts, that will put you in a position to more or less come up with, I mean, that will put you in a position to answer all the objective type, the multiple choice questions, Now for the subjective questions, you will need some secondary sources. Okay, so here comes the second part. All these secondary sources, all these critical commentaries, question of gender, question of property, question of aesthetics, whatever people have written of it, those are also in the recommendations. From those, figure out which ones, for example, if there are like 5 books on gender, try to figure out which one would suit you and which portion. So if it is a 500-page book, don't read all of it. Look at the contents page, look at the chapters. It will be chapterized. So now see which chapter would actually help you answer questions which are already spoken of in the text. For example, if there is I don't remember exactly what text there are. For example, there is a major text by Anne K. Miller on gender. So now, okay, Kriti, if you're still listening, just tell me, forget about the secondary text. Give me a couple of examples of primary texts where the question of gender is actually spoken of in the Romantic period. Could you tell me poetry or fiction, novel, whatever? Any question? I mean, where is the question of the woman coming in? You have read a lot of it, I'm pretty sure. Think about it and tell me. Anyone, not only Kriti, anyone who can give me an example of a poem where the issues of gender has been raised. No one? Come on, you have all. Absolutely. Aditi actually posts a comment. Yes, Mary Wollstonecraft. Kriti, go ahead. Kriti, did you have anything in mind? Okay, let's move forward. Let's take Aditi's question, Aditi's point. Mary Wollstonecraft, The Rights of Men, right? Actually, it's not Rights of Men. That was Tom Paine. Rights of Women. That is Mary Wollstonecraft's text. Yes, that is neither poem nor a novel. It's a tract, right? And absolutely right. So you already have this in mind. See. So now what you do is when you're looking at the secondary texts, just see what commentary has been done on Wollstonecraft. That's how you categorize these secondary readings. Let me tell you how you have just a couple of weeks before your final exam, right? Don't start reading 10,000 secondary commentary. Let me give this to you straightforward right away. It is ideal those recommendations were there for your entire 8 weeks. If you haven't been able to keep up, that is fine. Right now, don't focus on those. Go repeatedly go back to the lectures, the audio as well as the transcript. Okay, listening to it and looking at the slides actually help. So do not only read the transcripts, go back to the lectures themselves. They're just 20-minute lectures each. Like go through those things. That will be your revision process, number one. Number two is read the primary texts. Okay, as Dave was saying, if you haven't read Dejection and Ode, read it. Right? Don't have to read several commentary on who has said Sari Magdifi, probably. I mean, that is one of the secondary texts recommended. If he has written on Coleridge or Blake, don't have to break your head over that right now. Read the original text, read the primary text properly, and see in what context Professor Nayar has spoken about it. He has very interestingly given separate categories, right? There is politics, there is a sentimental novel, there is the Gothic. Read the read the text from the Gothic lectures very well, as much as you can, or know the text at least. If even if you don't read all the novels, those are huge novels. Okay, the Gothic. Then there's a question of science. Then exoticism and colonialism, right? The empire, right? So all these categories are there. try to, then there's a question of gender, of course. So read primary texts that covers all of these. Then think of how many secondary texts you can actually go to. All right? Does that answer the question, Preeti? No? Yes? No? Maybe? You need further clarifications? Any response at all? Preeti, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir, totally, totally. Thank you so much. You rightly answered my, and you really got my point. What I was asking, because I was really worried about those texts, because I haven't gone through them, and they're
Hmm.
really large to read. And you have rightly just mentioned what I was asking. So I
Hmm.
will definitely keep those your suggestions in my mind. I definitely will make myself more reading of those primary text more profoundly, and if I'll get time, I'll definitely read the secondary text as well, because I'm really into gendered, and because I've completed one of my course in feminism as well. So that's why
Hmm.
I was asking. So for that, I must really say, uh, it was really, you aptly answered my question. Thank you so much.
No problem. That's why I'm here, right? Yeah. So keep them. And gender is a very interesting thing, and it is not only about feminism. For example, the question of what do you call it? Anti-heterosexual relationships, for example, not exactly homosexual relationships, but the normative heterosexual. That is first time Christabel, Coleridge's Christabel, actually has spoken of it. Professor Nayar has beautifully summarized the entire thing. Read that. Now think of it. Coleridge's Christabel itself is a long, huge poem. So now go back to like be logical before the exam. I always say do smart work alongside hard work. Okay, don't like only go with hard work and try to finish everything. Understand you have a limited time to prepare for the exam. Do your best, but also know what to select. So instead of reading two long 500-page secondary text, read three short poems, but read those very well. Okay, that's how you need to like be smart. All right, so yes, if you are interested in gender, and keep this, see, that is the point of a course as well. These recommendations are there, keep note of them. These will help you in other courses or anything else that you do as well. So keep a note of this, and whatever you can't finish right now, do it later. But one thing I can tell you right away, that in the final exam, one or two objectives, the multiple choice questions will be based on the secondary texts. Just one or two. Okay, and that too not, okay, what did Anne Miller talk of? No, nothing like that. In the lecture, whatever has been spoken of, there might be one or two questions based on the text, but the entire 100 marks test, that exam, will be on your primary text and concepts and themes. That is it. Okay, the secondary texts are there to help you, just like the lectures are there to help you. Okay, and I will post these things in the discussion forum. I highly recommend all of you to follow the discussion forum from now on. I have asked there if you have any questions or not. I haven't seen any response, so I will post another couple of things from now on. Every 2 days or every 3 days, look at the discussion forum, if not every single day, because I won't be able to post something or the other every single day, and it is pointless. Like that, I don't need to bombard you with all kinds of suggestions right now. But every 2 3 days, I will post something. Look at those. Okay. The only thing I'm like repeatedly telling you, focus on the primary readings and the lectures. If you can do that properly, and if you have a range to talk of, I mean, something about gender, something about the Gothic, something about the empire, something about colonialism, something about aesthetics, something about the sublime. right? Kriti was talking about the Sublime. So all these thematic structures just have texts under each of the themes. What are the three texts that talks of marriage? What is the attitude towards marriage? Mary Wollstonecraft talks about marriage in a very distinct way. Jane Austen, on the other hand, speaks of marriage in a very different way, right? So just think of things like this, basically. So if you have that range in place, trust me, I can assure you the exam will not be a huge problem. Someone mentioned you're scared to face the exam. There's nothing to be scared. As I said, it won't be cakewalk. It is not only copy paste from the lecture. Okay, you have to read the things. If you do that, you don't need 20,000 secondary readings. Okay, as I told Kriti right away, you do not need to worry about so many secondary readings. They are there to help you. Once you're done with the primary texts, these are auxiliary support, right, to better yourself. But otherwise, focus on the texts themselves. All right. I think you all will do very good, actually, very well. Okay, let me see if there are any other questions on the chat. Doesn't look like right now. Okay, who else wants to come up with any concerns, or as Kriti and they did, like just comment on something and let me see. I can, even if you don't have a question, whatever is coming to your mind, and I will try to discuss that. Don't be shy or hesitant about anything. This session, repeatedly what I'm saying, this session is for us to clarify everything. And from experience, I have been in the academics for a long time. From experience, I can tell you, in your mind, you might think, oh, that's a stupid question, but the moment you utter it, you will find 10 other people had the same questions. So it is really productive to actually speak up. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we have lots of time. Tell me, come on, come on. How is it that no one else has any question? There was a form sent out to you. Let me check if there are any questions there or not. Yes, Swati had a question on the exam format, which I will end with. Before that, I'm taking the questions so that everyone is here. I didn't want to start with the format itself because some people are joining a little late. I will go into the format of the question in a few minutes. There was a Preeti had a question on exam registration and the exam city and stuff. Very frankly, Preeti, if you're online, I don't know. If you're online, I am not the person to answer that question. You have to write to the NPTEL support team. I can give you the email address on the discussion forum right after we are done with this session. Yeah, because I am not involved in these administrative things, so they will be able to help you. If you have registered, I mean, they will help you right away. What else do we have? There's an interesting thing. How do you say your name? Tajuddin? I'm really bad with names. Sorry. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, correct me, okay? There's a very interesting question about primary and secondary imagination. Okay, who came up with primary? Whose terms are these? Primary imagination, secondary imagination? Anyone? I want to hear from you first before I answer the question. You have heard of this in very, very early in the lectures, and I think in assignments there has been a question as well. What is primary and not what is? I will tell you what it is, but yes, absolutely, Jay. So it is Coleridge, right? There are three kinds of imagination that Coleridge actually talks of: primary imagination, secondary imagination, and fancy. Okay, he's talking of this in Biographia Literaria. Look at the Biographia Literaria is like a huge, huge philosophical text. Some of it actually connects to literature. Since it is mentioned in the lecture, again going back to that logical question, right? Since Biographia Literaria is mentioned in the lecture, are you expected to read the entire thing? No, of course not. Okay, you need to understand for sure primary imagination, secondary imagination, and fancy. So primary imagination is, as it says, it's the primary visceral imagination that we have. It connects us. It's the ideal, basically. We have no control on it. That is the imagination that we have. It connects our mind to the divine, as it says in a philosophical or a spiritual realm. Okay, that is your primary imagination right there. Secondary imagination is what we voluntarily, what we deliberately actually glean from that and use that imagination to creative pursuits. That is your secondary imagination. That is what Coleridge, according to Coleridge, secondary imagination is the one that is of the highest order that uh, literature or any form of art, literature, painting, or any kind of creative pursuit uses secondary imagination to its highest order. So any successful artist, be it a poet, be it an artist, a painter, whatever, they use secondary imagination as the most essential element. All right, not the primary imagination, because that we have no control over. Okay, so secondary imagination is the one that is most essential for creative work. And fancy is something that Coleridge talks about, which is basically collating things, two or three different things. Which is for Coleridge, that is very inferior, right? For example, I'm looking at a cloud and I'm imagining, oh, there is an umbrella. It looks like a rabbit or whatever it is. That Coleridge will say, which is like really inferior. Fancy has no. You can use fancy in poetry, but fancy has. It is not valuable so much. The most valuable thing is secondary imagination. All right, and I will send you some notes on this on the discussion forum as well, because there is an important concept. Does that answer your question, Tajuddin? Could you just, even if you're not speaking, could you just raise your hand or something like that? Show me a thumbs up. No? All right. Thank you so much. I really like when I get the responses, because you guys can see me. I can't see any of you, right? So it's good to know that, I'm answering your questions. Thank you for that. Now that, while I was speaking of this, that's a very important question that you've been actually asked, not only about Coleridge itself. Now this is something, one hint about your final exam as well. Know the major terms or theories that people have come up with. Coleridge's one of the most important thing is the theory of imagination. All right. As I said, primary, secondary, fancy. So this is one of the major terms or theories that have been established in the Romantic period. What are the other things? Wordsworth in his preface came up with a couple of things there, right? Who can tell me what those are? What is the famous manifesto of what poetry is? Which anyone, whether you're doing a romantic course or not, any course on poetry will actually talk of it. It's so famous. It's spontaneous. What was that? What was the term? Can anyone tell me? You all know that. Think of it. Think. No?
Could you repeat the question?
So what is poetry according to Wordsworth? He has defined it in his
A spontaneous overflow of emotions recollected in tranquility.
Absolutely. Spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions, powerful feelings, emotions recollected in tranquility. Absolutely. Right? Thank you. That's great, Vivek. So see, you are all prepared for the exam. So these kind of things, I mean, there won't be a direct question like spontaneous dash, fill in the blanks. No, it won't be a copy paste. But if you know this, there will be some conceptual questions where you'll be like, okay, Wordsworth says this, so all right, I can use this. All right. So this is what Wordsworth's theory is, right? And he's saying that language shouldn't be really elitist. It should be for the rustics. It should be about the simple man. So that is Wordsworth influence. Coleridge is coming up with this. Keats is coming up with what? Keats's theory. There is a very important theory by Keats, right? Negative capability, right? Shelley is coming up with, in his defense of poetry, he's coming up with unacknowledged legislators. That's Shelley's version of what a poet is. He's saying poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the future world, right? They are unacknowledged. They are doing their work. They are the flag bearers of the future, but right now they are unacknowledged, right? So these are the main theories of the major poets, right? For example, Burke, Kriti was talking about, but Burke had two major things. One is the theory of the sublime. There was another thing. Burke was very conservative. If you go back to the question of the lectures on politics, you will see Professor Nayar talking of this. That while Coleridge was talking of revolution, early Wordsworth was talking of revolution. Shelley, for example, is all about revolution. The French Revolution was there, right, at the gates, at the turn of the century. Edmund Burke was like really conservative. Godwin was an anarchist, right? Godwin was like, uh, he's only for revolution. Everything needs to be turned politically charged. Edmund Burke was really conservative in that sense, right? He's like, no, I mean, things will fall apart. There cannot be full-fledged revolution. He was very anxious about that. So know these things, like one or two major theories that people have come up with. Aditi was talking of Mary Wollstonecraft. Yes, rights of women. That's the major thing. Now, alongside that, read Maria or The Wrongs of Women. Right? It's a very short novel actually. So, but even if you do not get time to read the entire novel, know inside out what the novel is about, which connects very well with, that is a novel, a work of fiction by Wollstonecraft, but that also connects with the rights of men. The rights of women. What is the rights of women actually a response to? It is a response to Tom Paine's Rights of Men. So connect these things in the same way and you will be fine. See, the moment I'm asking you questions right now, you are giving me the answers, whether it's on chat or whether you're unmuting yourself. So that's it. Questions will be like this itself. So there's nothing to worry about it. Okay? And yes, primary imagination, secondary imagination, sublime, these things I'll put in the discussion forum as well for your last minute revision or something like that. By the way, keep this in mind. Just because I am saying these things are important does not mean that there will be direct questions on these, okay? I am not spoon feeding you with the questions. Understand that. You will be really misguided if you are going by that. I'm not giving you a question bank or anything, okay? These are not direct questions. I am very aware of what the questions are. So I'm giving you things that will help you prepare. But don't think that there will be a direct question on Wordsworth spontaneous overflow. Okay, I will help you in every step with all the preparation. All right, there's another question by Aditi right here. Yes, now coming to the final exam format itself. I have posted this on the discussion forum. I don't know how many of you have seen it. I will repeat myself right now. If you are taking notes, take this down properly. There are 3 parts to the question paper. Okay, there are 3 parts. The first part is the longest part, which has 25 questions, which are multiple choice questions, the same format as you see in your weekly assignments. All right, I'll tell that again. The first part has 25 objective questions, which is basically multiple choice questions, 4 options. By the way, 2 things: there are no negative marking for wrong options. Number 2, there are no questions which has multiple right answers. All questions exactly like you have done in your weekly assignments. 4 options, 1 is correct. There will be 25 questions in total, 2 marks each. That covers 50% of your paper. Clear? Now, there are 2 other parts. Part B or part 2, whatever you call it. The second part, you have to write 4 short notes. Okay, there will be like, that's what I was talking about. There will be themes, terms, theories, or concepts. There will be 4 of those you have to write short notes on. These are subject, you have to type it. There is no pen and paper thing, you have to type it out. These 4 things, each of those should be roughly around 250 words or something. A little less wouldn't mind, but don't write 100-word answers. It should be an explanatory, proper short notes. Okay, 4 of those. And I'll tell you how to answer those in a minute. The second part, 4 of those you have to answer. There will be 8 terms given, so you have to choose only 4 of those to answer. All right, you will be happy to know this. I'm pretty sure that it's like there are 8 of those, so you have to pick only 4. Okay, if you don't know all of these, doesn't matter, at least 4 you should be aware of. Okay, that's your second part. The third part, the final part, you have to write 2 long answers. Okay, somewhere around 700 words. Okay, and that will be, yeah, somewhere around 700 words. 2 answers. There will be 5 questions. You have to choose only 2 questions to answer them. Okay, there are lots of options. If you have taken other courses, I don't know how many options you get, but both these subjective parts, you will get lots and lots of options. So out of 5 questions, you have to choose only 2. In the second part, out of 8 terms, you have to answer only 4. Okay, that's basically the breakdown of the 3 parts of the exam. How to answer these 2? I will answer those questions in a moment, but before that, tell me, is there any doubt about the format, the layout? Is it absolutely clear? Here, go ahead.
Yeah, so how much time would we get per question approximately?
You will get 3 hours.
In total, right?
In total, you will get 3 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that is the reason this question, and I had clarified with the administrative team. Sometimes they give you 2 hours as well. This question paper, this is impossible to complete in 2 hours. So I asked them specifically. They have told me that yes, 3 hours is what they will be given. Okay, so in 3 hours, now that's a good question there. Very good question. So how do you divide your time? Understand the multiple choice questions, they are there, 25 questions. Don't rush through them because you will be confused in some of the questions. So don't rush through them just to finish it. Take your time, but keep in mind that the other two parts will actually take most of your time. Okay, so keep roughly around 20 minutes each for the two long questions. So that is 20 minutes plus 20 minutes, that's 40 minutes right there. Then for each of the short questions, the short notes on the terms, there are four you have to write, right? So keep 15 minutes each probably. So either you know or you don't know, right? And that's like 250 words, right? So 15 minutes each, that is like 1 hour for four of these. So 1 hour, 40 minutes gone. Now you have another 1 hour, 20 minutes for the entire multiple choice question. Do you need more than 1 hour to actually finish 25 multiple choice questions? No, you don't. So now back calculate again. Now what do? You can actually take half an hour for each of the questions. Instead of 20 minutes, for the long questions, you can take half an hour each, right? That gives you 1 hour, another 1 hour for the short notes, then another hour for the multiple choice. Now, if you have finished the multiple choice really quickly, if you have saved some time, at least 15 minutes or 10 minutes from your first part, the multiple choice, first hour, then you have more than 2 hours to go through all the subjective questions. This is how I will break down the things in my mind. If I am taking an exam, this is how I will approach. But this is not to say you cannot approach in different ways. You do it in your way. But I think whichever way you do, 3 hours is more than enough, right? So be judicious about your time. Did the time breakup actually help you? This is how I am thinking. Or is there any questions?
I personally,
Yeah.
I would personally dedicate more time to the long answers, the essay types. I would probably give them 45 minutes each because I don't think I would need more than 30 minutes for the MCQs.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, seriously. That's what I'm telling you. I mean, the faster you finish the multiple choice things, the more time you have for the longer answers. Because the longer answers are very specific, right? And I'll tell you how to approach those, what is required of those, like in a couple of minutes. But I wanted to clear this out, the format and layout, I wanted to clear it up fast. Okay, come up with other questions. All of you have registered for the exam, not only they, right? So yeah, go ahead, give your questions. Let me see what is posted on the chat. Yeah, there's a question that says you've missed the deadline for registration. I don't know about this. Yeah, I mean, as you said, you have dropped a mail to NPTEL. I think they will get back to you. These administrative things I have no idea about actually. I will, from my end, I will actually ask them. Yeah, I feel really bad. I mean, these things happen, right? Especially the times that we are going through something or the other in our personal lives or on the news we are just seeing. So yeah, I mean, sometimes we miss deadlines, but yeah, sadly, I have nothing to do on that. I will ask from my end what they think, the coordinators think, but yeah, I have no control of this. So yeah, do write to them. And again, since there are a couple of these questions, I will post. I have posted this earlier, but I will post another time on the discussion forum, an email ID, a support email ID where you can write about this. All right. Okay. Before we wrap up with the final suggestions for the exam answers, let me one last time look at the questions. Okay, there is another question of a similar kind. How many assignments you need to submit, and without a submission of assignments, can you write the exam or not? These things just go through the first page of the course. All the information are given there. As far as I remember, you can, I think you can write the exam, but there is a minimum score that you need to get in your weekly assignments as well as the final exam to get your certificate, if I'm not wrong. But I don't know what that percentage is. Yeah, thanks, Jay. So yeah, 6 out of 8 assignments and 40%. Yeah, that's the thing. So go through all these things, and again, this detail definitely it is there on the course overview page or whatever that first page of the course is called. It is there right away. And about the registration and everything, just write to the support team. I have nothing to say about that. Really sorry. I mean, I'm not involved in the process. Okay, so if there are no other questions, let me just give you a couple of tips for the short notes as well as the long answer questions. Okay, and I will, don't worry about it, I will post these on the discussion forum again. One is for the short answer questions. Not short answer, what am I saying? Short term, short notes, right? And that is what it is. Okay, you don't have to write an entire essay on it. As I said, 250 words, 250, 280 words are more than enough. What you need to do there, for example, if there is a question on what we started, our first question in this forum was on fences and enclosures, right? Okay, let's take that as an example. If there's a question on property, land right, or something like that, enclosure. Let's say enclosure is a term that's given. What do you do? First, explain in the first couple of sentences or 3 sentences, whatever, like that doesn't matter how much time you need. The first part, how much space you need. The first part of it, it should clarify the term. Okay, okay, enclosure means this, it refers to this. This, if there is a specific term for enclosure, it is not a term, it's not like primary imagination where you should mention, oh, this is Coleridge's theory. That is the first thing you should do. But with enclosure, there is no one coined that term, right? So you give the concept, clarify what that term is, then go on to say who uses it the most, and keep this in mind. By who, I mean who all, right? If there is not one person who is really connected to it, then give 2 or 3 people who have used it, literary scholars or artists or whatever it is, give that. Then the last part, try to, again, given the space, in 1 or 2 sentences, give an example of a text. And by text, I mean a literary text or a painting. For example, if we go back to that question, the first question that we spoke of, they actually pointed this out. If the question is on, if the term is enclosure, first tell me what enclosure is, then tell me, okay, John Clare and Constable have depicted enclosure in their own ways, in their thing. The last part is give an example of a text. For example, in Village Minstrel, John Clare is talking about how enclosures is a question of property, and it makes, I mean, it creates the division between the elites, the landowners, and the labor class or the vagrants. Or another example you can give, don't give too many examples, clarify the term, give me one example, that is fine. If John Clare, this is good. If not, say, okay, constable, in this picture, this painting, not a picture, sorry. In this painting, he depicts the fence in such a way that in the foreground, it creates the distinction between this part of the land and that part of the land, blah, 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 whatever it is. What do you think of it? The short note, give me snippets. All right, that is what the short note is. Don't go on aimlessly about things. Three major parts. Clarify the term or the concept, whatever it is. Give me some details. If someone is related to that term, give me who that is. If multiple people are related to that term, associated with that term, give me that and give me example. That is basically your short notes. Is that clear? Is there any question? Clarification? Comments? I want to hear from you before I move on to the long questions. That is what short notes is about. And that should cover 250 words. Any comments? No, it's not clear? Some thumbs up, some raise your hand things. Okay, Aditi says it's clear. All right, I get a couple of thumbs ups. That's good. Okay, now the long answer questions. 2 questions you have to answer out of 5. Now, the long answer questions, I will give you a couple of demo questions on the discussion forum as well. Keep in mind, those questions will be really removed from what the actual question paper is asking, okay? So once again, these are not question banks. These are just the pattern of the question, okay? So that you're not caught off guard. So if I ask you a question on, say we were talking of gender. So if I ask you a question on gender, I'll give you how that question can be framed on the discussion forum. Don't think that is a question related to what a real question will be on the question paper, okay? These are just the pattern. So the long questions will have, it will be an explanatory question, okay? It won't be one line question. There will be a context given in the question and a specific question asked with reference to 2 texts, okay? All of the questions, and this is why I was going on telling you that you have to read some texts, some primary texts before coming to the exam, okay? What you read is up to you. None of the questions, none of the final, the longer questions will ask you about a direct text, okay? It is up to you to choose your text. For example, there will be no question that will ask you, okay, what does Mariah do in Wollstonecraft's Wrongs of Women when Danford has betrayed her? There won't be any question like that, okay? There will be questions like, okay, since we have spoken about Wollstonecraft and Tom Paine, Wollstonecraft's vindication, rights of women, that is a response to Tom Paine, who is talking of the rights of man, and Wollstonecraft is talking of the rights of women in response to that, because Tom Paine had left the women aside. This will be a context. Then the question could be, pick any 2 texts of your choice of the Romantic period and illustrate or comment on how the question of rights was important in that era. Clear? So questions will be like this. There will be a context given, might be a theme, might be a fact, whatever it is, and then there will be a question related to that concept, which you will have to elaborate on with 2 texts in mind. Is that clear? Okay, since I'm not hearing any questions, I'll assume it is clear. Now, how do you answer that question? Give your you all know how to write essay type questions, the major thematics, give an introduction. Okay, respond to that context. The context will be there established in the um, question itself. So respond to that context first. What do you think? And elaborate on that. If this is the question we were considering, give some specific, okay, Tom Paine has said so and so, and don't have to go into like every little quote or anything. Just give me a gist of, for this part, give me a gist of what Tom Paine has said. Then go to, you can also, if you want to go in an advanced level, you can also talk about what responses Tom Paine got in his time anyway. Then comes the question of, okay, Wollstonecraft is responding because she thinks dot dot dot. Okay, and then give an introduction to your answer. Then say these are the very clearly these are the two texts which I think fits into the question. These are the most important texts that raise the question of rights. And one more time, it is your choice what text you will talk of. There might be poem, there might be a piece of fiction, and like it doesn't matter. And it is your choice. So if you say these are the two things I think most important, it is okay. Don't worry about whether I think those are important or not, or whether they are actually established important or not. It is your choice what you think is important or unimportant. That's all. And not only important or unimportant, what you have read and what you haven't. Let's be practical here. Okay, two of the things you have to mention. Then go ahead and talk of both of the texts, how they connect to this theme itself or the issue itself, and also how they connect to each other. That okay, this is one text that actually connects with Wollstonecraft's idea and the question of rights in general. This is another text, but they too have very different approaches. You can establish that. Very frankly, not all questions, there is no formula. Not all of the texts will relate to each other or contradict each other. And that's fine. It depends on which two texts you choose. For example, if you're choosing, if there's a question on science, for example, there was one lecture entirely on science in the Romantic period, right? Science was booming in the period. A lot of modern science that we know right now had begun in the Romantic period in several forms. So if there's a question on science, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, considerably, I mean, arguably the first science fiction novel ever written. Okay, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and say, for example, Keats's On First Looking at Chapman's Homer. Read that sonnet. I think it is mentioned in one of the lectures. It has a lot of references to astronomy and cartography. So that is there. So these two, one is a poem, one is a sonnet, 14 lines. The other one is an entire novel. Both of them deal with science. So whatever that thematic question about science is, if you take these two texts, of course they are very different from each other. They are different genres and they talk of different things. One is talking about life sciences and other sciences, like in terms of electricity and galvanism. Mary Shelley talks of several things if you read Frankenstein. On the other hand, Keats is talking of astronomy and geology, cartography, all this. So these are talking very different things, but both actually consider science as important and both are influenced by the scientific discoveries of that time. So if you're talking of these two texts, they might or might not relate to each other. That is fine. So whatever text you choose, will determine how you will proceed with that long answer. But mainly, again, there are three fundamental parts. One, elaborate on the context itself, give an introduction to your entire thesis, the entire rest of your body, paragraphs, or whatever you call it, the rest of your answer. Number two, specify the two texts that you're taking up and why you're taking up. Always justify why. And that why can be answered in several ways. How you are relating to that context, that introduction will actually allow you to give the two texts the importance they have. The third part, go into the close reading. Pick out specific parts of the text and elaborate on them. That is it basically. Just break down into smaller chunks and you will do fine. Is that fine? Does that clarify details? Kriti says yes. They says yes as well.
Actually, I'm raising my hand.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so will we get to see the descriptive questions before we get to the MCQs? Or does the structure specifically say that we have to finish the MCQs and then we'll be able to see the questions?
That is a good question, Jay. I didn't think of it. You know what? I will check with them and figure out how they are structuring the paper. I have, I don't know how the interface of the portal will be like, right? That's a very good question. Sometimes there are certain exams where I have faced this as well. That unless you finish part A, you cannot go to part B or C. I will figure this out and post it on the discussion forum. Okay, I will take a note of this. Thank you for that question.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I will tell them if it is possible to allow all the questions to be seen at least, because that's how I like answering questions, because sometimes I start with the longer questions.
Yeah,
So,
or even if we could see the questions beforehand, we could just be thinking about the questions while we are going through
while
the
you're
MCQs.
answering.
In that case, we could have a train of thought in that way.
Absolutely. No, I didn't think of it. Sorry about this. Yes, I will check with them, and in the next few days, I will actually answer this. I will post it on the discussion forum. All right. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, that is a very, very important question. All right. So, yeah, otherwise, the pattern and the structure of the question paper is clear, right? That is more or less what I had to say. Okay, if there are no other questions, we can wrap it up. We have been going more than an hour.
Yeah, we can close the section.
Yeah, we can wrap it up, right? It was like over an hour. Is there any final questions? Okay, then. All the best for your exam, and keep a lookout. Keep a tab on the discussion forum. There will be other suggestions there. All right. Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We will close the sections.
Yeah, we can close the session. Thanks.